Hello and welcome to the Fantasy Life Show. I'm your host, Ian Hartitz. It is a great day to be great, and it's a great day to break down our favorite starting draft position in fantasy football, as well as all sorts of wide receiver tiers and rankings and all that jazz. Truly, truly pumped, guys. Draft season's in the air. We got another slate of preseason football coming up. I freaking love football, and I hope you guys do. I know the man joining me today does. That's right, the one, the only, Matt F. the Oracle, Matthew Freedman. He's back. Dwayne's still on vacation or claiming his computer's broke, whatever. So Freedman, we're breaking down some wide receiver rankings, man. Let's go.
Yeah, I didn't know having your computer break during August was an option. If I had known that, I would have considered it. But, a great day to be great, and a great day to use the promo code Freedman for 20% off of the Fantasy Life Plus subscription.
Under cash is to no one's surprise on Freedman bringing that up. But yeah, seriously, code it Freedman for 20% off all of our Fantasy Life Plus products. Appreciate you guys as always on that. So again, plenty of wide receiver goodness to get to, but I've been asked this question a million times, so it's finally time to address it. DraftKings opening lines. What is our favorite draft position? Now, Freedman, as we know, we are not all so lucky as to get to actually pick what draft spot we want. Sometimes people are going to let, random chances of events happen. Personally, in my 8-team league, pathetic, I know, but it's my home team league. I'm in freaking 30 leagues, all right? But my one that's nearest and dearest to my heart, we always use the home run derby to randomly assign contestants. And then whoever ends up winning that, you get to pick the draft selections. So that's all good and done. But Freedman today wanted to go through a traditional 12-team league where we do prefer to draft from. I'll get to mine in a second. But first, you actually kind of prefer a bit more of a middle out approach. Shout out Silicon Valley.
Yeah, I don't think that is typically common. I think most people would rather have, picking in your top 3 or picking at the turn. I want Christian McCaffrey. I've talked on multiple shows about how I'm really in on Christian McCaffrey this year, and the 49ers just continue to have running backs get injured. I don't know why I'm laughing at that, but it's like Christian McCaffrey, it's like he's just siphoning off the life force of all of these backup running backs, and he's just going to go off for like 300 carries and 100 receptions this year and end up as the RB1, but you don't have to draft him as the RB1. You can draft him as the RB4 or RB5. And so that means looking at the ADP tool that we have, the lowest spot where he's going is 7.2 on Underdog. At ESPN, he's going at 8.4. I want spot number 7 because that gives me a great chance of getting Christian McCaffrey. And if for some reason he's not available, then great. I maybe get CeeDee Lamb. I might get Jahmyr Gibbs or Justin Jefferson. But I think at the 7th spot, I'm guaranteed of getting sort of like the final stud in that tier of guys.
We're going to pull up our premier national sports ADP board. And Freeman, we did talk about, just the different options we have. Right now, we have the board up and the grid to kind of help visualize it. But again, I think one of the best things you guys can do before you draft is to just get a good idea of where the guys are going in your fantasy providers contest. What a concept, I know, but I do have some articles coming out later this week. ESPN Sleeper, Yahoo Preferred Draft Strategy, and again, some of the biggest value discrepancies versus our rankings. So as you guys can see, Christian McCaffrey is going generally as a seventh pick. This is on ESPN ADP. And yeah, man, again, it is a situation where I think a lot of people have kind of had the same big three running backs and wide receivers, and that is the case over here at ESPN, more and more getting behind CMC. The question with CMC Freeman is always, well, what if he gets hurt? And I think a good response is, what if he doesn't? Because then you have the all-time freaking leader in PPR points per game at running back on your squad. So I don't hate it, man. And when you do come back around as we scroll over a little bit, look, you're still going to have a chance to get a stud wide receiver one with guys like Brian Thomas Jr., A.J. Brown, Nico Collins, or maybe you want to double dip at running back. All that said, though, man, I actually prefer to go a little bit earlier. I want to get not just a wide receiver one, I want the wide receiver one. And I think if I do have the chance to pick 1 through 12, I will accordingly just be taking one. Mr. Jamar Chase, come on down. And the big thing for me is really comes down to this round 3 area. Now, ESPN, I will say, Lab McConkey, being able to see him there at pick 31, that's amazing. I want to be in every single league that has him going that late because I will draft him every single time. But generally, that is the point where we start to get to some of the more wonky RB2s, the James Cooks, the Chuba Hubbards of the world, and also wide receiver 2s where we have at least one problem. So more on them in a bit. But personally, again, I love the idea of getting Jamar Chase, having a chance to get another Drake London, Bucky Irving, or potentially dipping into the elite quarterback or tight end tiers. Even guys like Kyron Williams, T. Higgins, to me, are not exactly, being a tier drop-off that I'm afraid of yet. So again, Freeman, 3 picks in the top 25, man. It is a situation where when we don't have to worry about third-round reversal, I am a fan of 101.
Yeah, a few thoughts on this one. Jamar Chase, investor in fantasy life, so you have to love that. And then also, head boss Matthew Berry was on the late night show with Jimmy Fallon last night. And cool. He had the magazine. He talked about Jamar Chase as the guy that he would want to take with the 101. And I totally get the perspective because it is really nice to be at the turn of rounds 2 and 3 and be able to get your guys there. I like being in the middle of the rounds, especially when we get past, let's say, the top 3 rounds, because at that point, depending on the league you're in, if you're in a friends and family league, you have a couple of dumb uncles in there. Some guys are going to make some bad picks and let some value start to fall down the board, which means that if you're in the middle of each round, you have a decent shot of catching some of those guys who fall past ADP in each of your picks. So I like that dynamic as well, but I certainly feel you. And Jamar Chase, I think, definitely should be the 101.
By the way, Freeman, Matthew Berry was on the Tonight Show, not whatever you just said. So I sincerely do hope that you still have a job this time tomorrow. Yeah. So again, 101 for me, 107 for Freeman. I do see the allure of, again, being more in that middle position. Maybe there's going to be a big quarterback or a tight end run. It is a little bit tricky when you are at the end. But honestly, again, once we kind of get past the first 3 or 4 rounds, like weird stuff is going to happen. That's a fantasy draft. So really, I'm just trying to look and see what can I come close to guaranteeing to get in those first 3 picks before having to move on to round by round strategy. Again, picking that 101. Personally, my fave, but I do see where Freeman's coming from. That 107, you are going to be in a pretty good spot to be starting off with a stone cold baller RB or wide receiver. So good stuff there, Freeman. Again, this has been our DraftKings opening lines. Football fans, the countdown is on and the road to kickoff starts now. From bold predictions to preseason hype, this is the perfect time to lock in your picks and join the action. I've accordingly partnered with DraftKings Sportsbook to bring you a killer offer. Place a $10 plus NFL futures bet and get a survivor pool ticket automatically. Tough word aside, back your squad and take your shot at the $1 million plus top prize. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and sign up using my promo code FANTASYLIFE. The crown is yours. And seriously, survivor pools are simple. Pick one NFL team to win each week. Survive in advance. But here's the twist. You cannot pick the same team twice. Strategy counts. You think you can outlast the field? Go ahead and prove it. And also want to make your picks even more exciting? Well, you can use your bet to explore same game parlays for a shot at an even bigger payout. Stack multiple bets from one matchup for max drama. And if sports betting isn't live in your state yet, no sweat. You can still play DraftKings Daily Fantasy Sports for a chance to win real cash prizes. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Again, sign up using promo code FANTASYLIFE. Place a $10 plus NFL futures bet and claim your ticket to the Survivor Pool. That's promo code FANTASYLIFE only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Wide receiver tier episode, everyone. I had an article go up last week on fantasylife.com for free that you can check out for yourself. Limited myself to 50 words per wide receiver. Again, not trying to make you read an entire almanac. If you want to do that, you can go check out Dwayne's article. I just love hitting on Dwayne when he's not here to defend himself. One of my favorite pastimes. But in all seriousness, again, great stuff from Dwayne. I'm just trying to go ahead and provide my stuff here. And Freedman's going to accordingly do what he does best and pick it apart. So Freedman, I am not a coward. That is one thing that people cannot say about me. I have one man sitting alone in tier one, and that is Ja'Marr Chase. So again, tier one for me is the wide receiver one, y'all. Tier two instead is actually going to be 5 different guys. I have dubbed this tier easily imaginable path to overall wide receiver one status. CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson, Nico Collins, Puka Nacua, and Malik Neighbors. So out of this tier two, Freedman, you cannot say Ja'Marr Chase. He's in tier one. We all agree Ja'Marr Chase is the wide receiver one. Who among the tier two wide receivers do you think could actually finish as the wide receiver one?
Well, shout out on the tier. I think you got this tier absolutely right, because these are the 5 guys that I would say, if Ja'Marr Chase isn't the wide receiver one, it's, I wouldn't say almost certainly one of these 5 guys, but high probability one of these 5 guys. If I wanted to be boring, which, you know, is almost like my brand, I would say it's got to be CeeDee Lamb. Like, he's the number 2 guy in terms of the projections, number 2 guy in the rankings. I think sort of like Ja'Marr Chase, he's in a situation that's pretty good offensively, where he's got an established quarterback. I think they're going to throw the ball a lot. They have a defense that is kind of questionable, so they might need to throw a lot to stay in games. They could have a high scoring offense. So like, you can see how CeeDee Lamb gets there. But if I wanted to be a little more adventurous, I would say Nico Collins and just sort of like check off the other guys. Like, Nacua needs to compete with Adams, and Stafford has an injured back. Neighbors has a suboptimal quarterback situation. Amon-Ra St. Brown, there's no Ben Johnson, and he needs to compete with everyone in that offense. But Nico Collins, like, little competition for targets and a good quarterback. I mean, it's really conceivable Nico Collins has 170 targets this year, like 10 targets a game, maybe even more. And we know how explosive he is on a per target basis or per route basis. When this guy gets thrown the ball, like, he can absolutely make splash plays. So you have to love what Nico Collins does. And Ian, I know that, like, you are on the Nico Collins upside train. And I have to admit, like, I haven't really been on that train so much, but when I started going through the mental exercise of, all right, who has maybe not like the most probabilistic path to being the number one, but maybe like the clearest path, Nico Collins definitely stood out to me.
Been here. We still got room on the bandwagon, Freedman. It is only August 12th after all. So if you want to join, my friend, you are welcome on. But yeah, man, again, for any of these wide receivers, we're going to use different stats, different talking points, but we're kind of all coming down to the same 4 factors. Talent. Well, Nico Collins is the only wide receiver in the NFL to average at least 3 yards per out run over the last 2 years. I would say he's pretty freaking good at the game. Volume. Like you just said, man, if you had to pick 5 players who have the chance to lead the NFL in targets, I don't know how you could leave Nico Collins off that, given the target competition in Houston. In terms of his quarterback, I know Stroud took a little bit of a step back last year. We can talk about his fantasy upside. More so an issue of rushing, though. I do think when you start seeing, again, more of the ball knowers, their real life football minds, there is a pretty wide consensus that CJ Stroud is, in fact, quite good at throwing the football. I agree. And then age, like we were talking about a guy firmly in his prime at age 26. So we were on the same page. Nico Collins, he is my 3rd most drafted wide receiver of the offseason and easily the top guy inside the top 24. I've continued to go out of my way to land him throughout this offseason. So feeling good there. I did want to note that you actually have Malik Neighbors wide receiver 4, and I do respect it because at the same time, we do have Malik Neighbors number 1 in terms of projected targets over at fantasylife.com. And as much as the QB issues are there, Freedman, Russell Wilson, Jameis Winston, Jackson Dart, I think if we had to rank them versus Daniel Jones, and it pains me to say it, Drew Lock and Tommy DeVito as well, like we take all 3 of these guys over what Malik had to deal with last year. And oh yeah, what did he do last year? Averaged the 3rd most freaking PPR points per game of all time by a rookie wide receiver, trailing only OBJ and also Randy Moss. So I will say, I don't love this lingering toe thing going on with Neighbors. It impacted them last year as well. And I know they're just being cautious in August practice. But for me, Freedman, that's been enough of a tiebreaker to prefer guys like Nico ahead of him.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I would say Neighbors, what he has going for him is a really high floor. And if Jackson Dart actually hits, then that ceiling can start to be accessed. But right now, I think he's more of a high floor guy and a high median outcome guy versus a high ceiling guy.
By the way, for our YouTube TV viewers right now, first of all, appreciate you guys tuning in, but we are actually showing some pretty cool graphics that you can access over at fantasylife.com in our utilization tool section. Again, really great stuff from the great mind of Dwayne McFarland, showing just different targets. You can make different filters in terms of weeks and whatever you're looking for. Really great stuff with the award-winning, critically acclaimed utilization score, of course, being present for everyone. So good stuff there inside of our first two tiers. Let's make things a little bit harder, though, Freedman, as we move on to tier 3. This is going to be wide receiver 7 through 12 for me, okay? Basically our mid-tier, low-end wide receiver ones. Kicking things off with Brian Thomas Jr. and then Drake London, A.J. Brown, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Lab McConkey, and T. Higgins. Hand up, it terrifies me to rank Amon-Ra as the wide receiver 10 as we sit here today, Freeman. I don't have a wonderful reason for having them behind these guys. That's why they're in a tier after all. So with that said, what tier 3 wide receiver do you think has the best chance of making us, a.k.a. me, look stupid for not treating them as a legit top 5 option?
All right. I have a couple of thoughts on this. One, Amon-Ra St. Brown. He's a first team All Pro 2 years in a row. You just mentioned him. 1,200 yards 3 years in a row. I think he has a limited ceiling because of the offensive situation he's in, but a super high floor, incredibly high floor. I will say, I was stupid enough to write an article in which I said, do not draft these guys. And Amon-Ra St. Brown was one of those guys. And it has nothing to do with his ability. It has a lot to do with the offensive environment and the fact that I don't think he has a great chance of strongly outperforming his ADP. But I think he has a really high floor. And then the other guy who stands out to me is A.J. Brown. And I would just say in real life, not fantasy, but in reality, these guys are top 5, maybe top 8 NFL wide receivers. But I would put them both probably in the top 5. A.J. Brown, 10.1 yards per target for his career. He's never been a first team All Pro, but that has been more about volume than about like his actual ability. And he's been a second team All Pro each of the last 3 years. I mean, again, I think he's every bit of a Hall of Famer as Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase. He just doesn't have quite the numbers to back it up. But, you know, just like the dude on the field, he's an absolute baller and everyone knows it. What if it's a situation where this year the Eagles have to throw the ball just a little bit more? It doesn't even need to be all that much more, just a little bit more, maybe just one more target a game for A.J. Brown. That can make a difference.
It's a situation where it's not like he's been ignored out there. We only have to go back one season ago to see him earn 158 targets for the 2023 Eagles. So, yeah, maybe we don't get that 180 target boom from one of these other guys. I'm with you, Freeman. I don't even think you need to go top 5 for AJB. I think he is firmly in that top 3 alongside Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson. Amon-Ra maybe just a tad behind, but you want to call him a top 5 wide receiver versus top 8. I'm not going to overly disagree with you. So, again, tier 3 wide receivers. I called this one. I don't have 99 problems, but I do have one. Again, it just comes down to the fact where BTJ, we still don't know if Trevor Lawrence is going to be generational just because Liam Cohen is there. Also, Travis Hunter, obviously going to be demanding some targets in his own right. Drake London, do we know that Michael Penix is going to be awesome? We do not just yet. A.J. Brown, you mentioned it, some of the volume concerns, also sharing an offense with Devonta Smith. Amon-Ra St. Brown, loss of Ben Johnson, also Jameson Williams, Sam Laporta in there, run first as it is. Lab McConkey is back at practice. Luckily, love to see that. That said, everything we've seen from this Chargers offense this offseason does indicate a bit more of a run first approach. And then T. Higgins out wide receiver 12 for me. Of course, sharing the same offense with Jamar Chase. Freeman, you do actually have T. Higgins, though, wide receiver 16, man. Talk about just pure hatred. Why do you hate T. Higgins as a person and especially a fantasy football player, Freeman?
Well, I mean, unlike Jamar Chase, he did not invest in our company. So that has to be the number one factor. But I will say also Drake London is someone that I'm fading. So a couple of guys in this tier. The thing with T. Higgins, a couple of thoughts here. So one, he's missed significant time over the past 4 years. And I feel like that has to be taken into account. And then there's also the idea of like quote unquote arbitrage. Like, why would I buy this production right here when a couple of rounds later, I can get super comparable production that I'm projecting out of someone like Devontae Smith, right? Like they're similar guys in terms of like, they're both really elite number 2 wide receivers who are in strong offenses playing alongside really dominant number 1 wide receivers. They have similar projections. I wouldn't say like exactly similar playing styles, but like their situations are similar. And then you have Higgins as, I would say, a greater injury risk. I don't know why I would just draft Higgins here when I could get Devontae Smith later. And then Drake London, I mean, the dude was awesome last year, but I think he's being drafted this year as if the 39 targets that he saw in the 3 games with Michael Penix, as if those are just going to extrapolate over the course of the season. And I don't think we can make that assumption. And keep in mind, Michael Penix, highly unproven. He could be great, but he could also be very mediocre. And if that's the case, I think Drake London is being overdrafted.
Would be a 221 target projection for those mathers trying to do that at home. This is probably a good reason why we have Dwayne and Freedman do the projections instead of your boy Ian, but maybe next year, everyone. So I hear you with that. Also, Darnell Mooney, don't sleep on him being at least somewhat of a deterrent to, again, a top 5 season if we are trying to make that argument. Actually, low-key guys have more receiving yards than Drake London through the first 14 weeks of last season. So no, we fully think that London's going to be the wide receiver 1 here, but I can see again, at least among some fellow ballers having a little bit of hesitation. So again, top 3 tiers, plenty of guys who we all love to draft anyway, regardless of where you want to rank them. Things get a little bit tougher though after we get past our top 12 guys. Time for our ADP audit as we get into our tier 4 and 5 wide receivers presented by Premier National Sports. This is really where things get messy, Freeman. It's honestly a reason why I like having that one-on-one to go back to our previous conversation, because I prefer not to really have to take too big of a shot at these tier 4 wide receivers. I have named this tier. Look at them. They're old, or their quarterback situation is not ideal. So again, wide receivers 13 through 19 in order: Devontae Adams, Tyreek Hill, Garrett Wilson, Marvin Harrison Jr., Jackson Smith-Njigba, Mike Evans, and Terry McLaurin. One Ohio State Buckeye after another. Gotta love that. But again, gotta not so much love one red flag or some shape or size for pretty much all these guys. So with that said, Freeman, because again, Devontae, Tyreek, those are 2 old men. We can all admit that. Garrett, Marvin Harrison, Jackson Smith-Njigba, we're not exactly loving the quarterback situations. Evans and McLaurin, also 2 guys that are going to be on the wrong side of 30 here as the season gets going. All that said, we know these are talented football players. Which one do you think we were overthinking the most, Freeman?
I think 2 of them, Devontae Adams and Tyreek Hill. And it's like, yeah, they're old, but they're both still, I think, really good players who project for getting a lot of targets. And in the past, they've been super productive with their targets. I don't think it would be a surprise if either one finished as a wide receiver 1 this year. Tyreek Hill just last year in fantasy drafts was going in the top 3. Right. Like, let's sort of like keep this in mind. Let's start with Devontae Adams. All right. Over the past 2 years, this is what he and Puka Nacua have done. In terms of opportunities per game, 10.3 for Nacua, 10.2 for Adams. In terms of yards, Nacua, 93.3 per game. That's really good. 71.2 yards per game for Adams. Obviously not as good as Nacua, but keep in mind he was playing with the Raiders and then with the Jets, whereas Nacua had Matthew Stafford throwing the ball to him with the benefit of head coach Sean McVay calling the plays, and then touchdowns. Adams, despite playing on bad offenses over the past 2 years, 0.52 touchdowns per game. Compare that to Nacua, 0.36 touchdowns per game. Like, there is actually a world in which Devontae Adams outscores Puka Nacua this year. Like, it's not probable, but it's not like and only 5% of the universes does this happen. Like, it happens more than people think. And then Tyreek Hill, right? He was not good, quote unquote, not good last year. And he still had 1,000 yards from scrimmage in a season in which his starting quarterback was out for a third of the year. What happens if Tua stays healthy for, 15, 16 games and Tyreek Hill ends up being Tyreek Hill? He ends up being very clearly a top 12 wide receiver. And we don't have to draft him like that at all. So I want Tyreek Hill. I don't want to say I want him everywhere because, as you say, look at him. He's old. And, that Dolphins offense could be bad. The vibes coming out of the Miami training camp are really bad. So, you can see how things blow up there. But it's like, hey, if a year ago you could tell me I could get Devontae Adams and Tyreek Hill now, where they are going, I would have all day said, sign me up for that.
Again, mentioned before, but I am doing some articles basically just going over the biggest values on Yahoo, Sleeper, and ESPN. And man, on Sleeper right now, Freedman, Devontae Adams is a round 4 pick. So yeah, at that price tag, sign me up. Round 3, round 2, maybe that's where things get a little bit tighter. But again, I could easily see us overthinking this. Tyreek Hill, as we saw in the offseason, I mean, I'm not a track nerd, but the dude ran a 10-10 100-meter dash. Like, I'm pretty sure he's not all of a sudden slow. And yes, we didn't exactly see him drop and pass after pass last season or anything like that. But, I think it's reasonable to believe that playing with a broken wrist probably wouldn't bring out the best in you. And then with Adams, man, I mean, we did see down the stretch last 7 weeks of the season, I believe he was the wide receiver 3, even not doing kind of the arbitrary sample size as we always do in the offseason. He still had top 8 numbers in terms of PPR points per game on a Jets offense that wasn't even all that good. Certainly getting an upgrade if it is hopefully going to be Stafford under center. And Freeman, I even think some of the Jimmy G stuff is a little bit overblown. Okay. Yes, we all would prefer Matthew Stafford there, but isn't it kind of funny when your backup quarterback is literally number 1 all time in yards per attempt if you kind of move the thresholds, and we're just freaking out about it? Okay, like we still have Sean McVay there, we still have Puka, we still have Devontae Adams. Like, okay, Freeman, you are running our projections, and I know you do a lot of great stuff for like kind of this like quarterback value against the spread. I would imagine it's a couple points in favor of Stafford, but if you did have to actually rank the backup quarterbacks in terms of the kind of least drop off, I mean, Jimmy G's got to be up there.
Yeah, Jimmy G is one of the best backup quarterbacks in the league. Now, you can say it has much more to do with the play calling than with him, and that's fine. I don't know if I necessarily argue with you, but I would say if there is a play caller swap that you can make without having any sort of drop off, it would be Kyle Shanahan to Sean McVay. Right. I think like McVay has proven that he has a really strong sense of how to use his quarterbacks. And Jimmy G has proven that when he is paired with a top tier play caller, he can execute the offense well enough so that all of the pass catchers in that offense can be productive. So I would obviously prefer to have Stafford in that offense, but if he misses a couple of games because of the back injury, the drop off to Jimmy G is not nearly as significant as people might expect.
Jimmy G, he's 100% a system quarterback. The system looks like it's pretty awesome in Los Angeles, okay? I mean, okay, I would give Minnesota and Philly the edge if we had to, ask Freeman to come over here and start a football game. But the Rams guys really probably would be in the top 5 any way you want to slice it. I will say the guy that kind of gives me a little bit of pause is Jackson Smith-Njigba, just because, man, it is a 23-year-old fresh off going for, 100 receptions, over 1,100 yards. And as much as I do think Geno Smith is better than Sam Darnold, Sam played some really good football last year. And, you bring in Cooper Kupp, is that really worse target competition than dealing with a much younger and fleet-footed version of DK Metcalf last year? I don't know. So again, JSN, someone where when I kind of get into August and I haven't been making a habit of drafting them, I do wonder if I'm just overthinking it just a little bit. But let's go ahead and move on to tier 5 Freedman. This is 5 wide receivers. I have labeled the tier. Their offense is number 1 wide receiver, ... for what that is worth. Again, some more clear red flags, if you will, for wide receiver 20, DK Metcalf, Xavier Worthy, Tedero McMillan, DJ Moore, and Calvin Ridley. So yes, with Xavier Worthy, he's catching passes from Patrick Mahomes. His concern's a bit more to do with Rashid Rice and that suspension stuff going on. It's tough to make every single tier perfect with the name. Okay, give me a break, everyone. But Freeman, looking at tier 5 again, which of these guys between Metcalf, Worthy, T-Mac, DJ Moore, and Ridley would you give the best chance of finishing with 150 or more targets this season?
All right. So I thought about this tier maybe more than any of the others. DK Metcalf is really intriguing. I've been projected for 124, so it's not that much of a push for him to get up to 150 if the Steelers happen to find themselves in more pass happy game scripts. But of course, offensive coordinator Arthur Smith just loves to run the ball. I think Metcalf has a really high floor, but maybe his ceiling is capped. So that pushed me to DJ Moore, who I have projected for 121 targets. And here's the thing. He's actually a good player. I don't think that many people appreciate actually how good he is, but he had 140 targets last year. So it's really not much of a push to get him up to 150. He's averaged 135 targets per season over the past 6 years. Let's say that the Bears offense gets better and they control the ball more, they can pass the ball more. That could result in more targets. DJ Moore, he's had 1,000 yards in all but 1 year over the past 6 years. And that was his final year in Carolina, which is just a terrible environment, offensive environment that he was in. He's had 1,200 yards 4 times in the past 6 years. Like, he's just actually a good player that people don't really think of as being as good as he is. Like, I wouldn't say he's elite, but I'd say he's maybe like a tier and a half underneath that. And people would probably say it's more like 3 tiers underneath that. So DJ Moore, I think he's a good player. I think he could, I don't know. I'm growing increasingly skeptical about Caleb Williams as the offseason wears on. But look, think about Patrick Mahomes in his first offseason as a starter. He was throwing interceptions all the time, right? It's like that can be a normal thing that happens in practice and in preseason games as guys are sort of like testing the bounds of reality. It could be the kind of thing where Caleb Williams, Ben Johnson, it just clicks and that offense explodes. And DJ Moore is the number 1 wide receiver and one of the best offenses in the league. Like, that is in the realm of reality. It might not be probable, but it's possible. Even if it doesn't happen, DJ Moore could still get to 150 targets. So DJ Moore is the guy that I'm going with here.
I like how we have this these handful of examples now of just guys turning out to be fantastic after just an atrocious start to their career, like a bad headline. In this case, we have the Mahomes 6 interception practice or whatever it was, the Devontae Adams year 1 for any wide receiver prospect that bust, the Jared Goff first year at Jeff Fisher for any quarterback with the bad season. So I'm with you, not throwing in the towel on Caleb Williams by any stretch, but man, for me, I would lean a little bit more towards Calvin Ridley or DK Metcalf, more so just looking at the lack of weaponry alongside these guys. Okay, I have more respect for Rome Odunze, Colston Loveland, even Luther Burden if he can find his way out of that Ben Johnson doghouse. When again, just trying to project these raw targets. I continue to bother Dwayne almost every single day about getting Calvin Ridley's target projection up. Hopefully, finally seeing that target share in the first team preseason snap. So we'll get there. I will continue to do the Lord's work trying to get that done. But Freedman, I will say a lot of guys in this tier, really, really good values, whether you want to project them for 120 or 150 targets in some of these home league formats. I mean, we got Xavier Worthy on Yahoo going in round 6. Calvin Ridley, round 6 over there at CBS. Tedero McMillan, though, man, he is looking like the prime home league staple that you guys should try to be leaving all your drafts with. We're talking round 7 over at Yahoo. Round 8, T-Mac on ESPN in this economy, Freeman. I cannot believe it. I did happen to see you doing our Reddit AMA yesterday. Make sure you guys go check that out. Fantastic fantasy football community over there at Reddit. We love you guys. You were saying, Freeman, that T-Mac actually was someone that you changed the most in your ranks after witnessing the greatness in this first preseason opener. Talk about where you have him and what the expectations are for the number 8 overall pick in 2025.
Yeah. So this past weekend, I wrote the piece, the guys I don't want to draft, and T-Mac was in that piece. And then, he has a great performance. I'm just like, well, maybe I would want to have that one back. Maybe I just don't publish that. But I will say, the upside, he's the upside case, right? You're like hoping for a Mike Evans type of rookie season where he has 1,000 yards and maybe he gets 8 touchdowns or something like that. And you hope that Bryce Young can take the step forward. I will say, I know Adam Thielen didn't really do much in that first preseason game. But whatever. I think Adam Thielen has shown over the past couple of years, despite his age, and he's going to be 35 years old this season, he still actually got something left in the tank. 199 targets he's had over the past 2 seasons. And then, of course, you have Jalen Coker, you have Xavier Legette. Like, there's just enough target competition there. And then I still have enough questions about Bryce Young. And I hate to say that, but I have enough questions about Bryce Young to where, like, I don't think it's like a smash that T-Mac is like destined to go off, but the upside is certainly there. And then Ian, I didn't mention Ridley because I knew you were going to. The thing that keeps me from bumping up the volume on Ridley, the upside is there. It's just a question about that offense. And I think he could dominate targets within that offense. Like he could legitimately have like the highest target share in the league this year, or maybe like the most air yards in the league. Like that could happen just based on the lack of target competition there. But I am still a little skeptical about whether the offense will be good enough to push him up to that 150 target threshold.
He finished number one last year in unrealized air yards, which is just a fancy way of kind of measuring the total distance that the incomplete targets actually traveled his way. And the year before that in Jacksonville, he was also among the top 5 wide receivers in those unfortunate fantasy-friendly opportunities that didn't come to fruition. Again, I do think Cam Ward's going to be an upgrade over Mason Rudolph and Will Levis, but let's face it, that bar isn't too high. Again, though, don't hate the player, hate the ADP. And some of these home league ADP guys for these players, really, really good stuff. Actually have some more to talk to exactly in that same vein. George Pickens, Jalen Waddle, Jameson Williams, more coming up on that. But yes, guys, this has been our ADP audit presented by Premier National Sports. Shout out to our friends over at Premier National Sports. If you or someone you know has a high school athlete looking to take their game to the next level, really consider, guys, checking out Premier National Sports, because just in today's day and age, it's not just trying to find a school that fits what you're looking for in terms of academics and, of course, on the football field, but you can make some freaking money out there. God bless America and the NIL for giving these guys a chance to finally make a little cash that they have earned for those universities. And yeah, Premier National Sports is a sort of trusted recruiting and NIL resource for high school athletes and their families. Again, help rising high school athletes take their game to the next level with personalized recruiting strategies and NIL education. Check them out if you haven't yet. You can get in touch with their team at premiernationalsports.com. Tier 6 wide receivers, Freedman. We are exiting the top 24 options, and this is where things start to get a little dicey. That said, still plenty of great players, and accordingly, I've labeled this tier, Bob Ross could paint a picture of greatness. So kicking things off with George Pickens, Cowboys wide receiver 2, maybe a discount version of T. Higgins, some people are saying. Also got Jameson Williams, Cortland Sutton, Devonta Smith, Jalen Waddle, Zay Flowers, Travis Hunter, Jacoby Myers, and Chris Olave filling things out. So again, we have a bunch of likely wide receiver 2 options in their own offense, as well as some guys like Cortland Sutton and obviously Chris Olave, who are the clear-cut number ones. We just have to wonder if maybe some of the running backs and tight ends in Denver are going to be taking over, and then who's exactly is going to be throwing the ball to Olave in New Orleans. I want to focus on these wide receiver 2 options, though, Freedman, because you mentioned earlier, again, the potential for Devontae Adams to perhaps outproduce Puka. Obviously, we talked about Devontae earlier, and he's in a different tier, but out of these wide receiver 2s, George Pickens, Jameson Williams, Devonta Smith, Jalen Waddle, and Travis Hunter, who do you think has the best chance to actually unseat their team's wide receiver 1 and score more fantasy points this season?
I will say I like this tier a lot. This feels like a power alley where I would like to get a number of these wide receivers. Devonta Smith talked about him earlier.
Stand up and just buy all these guys.
Yes.
That's what it's about.
Exactly. Yeah. In the auction. This is the spot for auctions. Devonta Smith, mentioned him earlier. I think he's basically a discount version of T. Higgins. It wouldn't surprise, especially if A.J. Brown misses a game or two and then Devonta Smith just soaks up all of the volume in that game. If by the end of the season, Devonta Smith actually had more production. And then Jalen Waddle. I know I talked about Tyreek Hill earlier, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong about Tyreek Hill and he's just toast or close to toast, and Jalen Waddle bounces back. I know Waddle had an atrocious year last year, which is why we are seeing, in part, why we're seeing him at this depressed ADP. But just think back to what he did the previous 3 seasons. Over 1,000 yards in each of those years, looked like a legit near wide receiver 1, a high end wide receiver 2. And now we don't have to pay anything close to that to get him. But he's still, in my opinion, in one of the best passing offenses in the league. I think there could be a big bounce back this year for Jalen Waddle. So if someone in this tier were to overtake the number 1 wide receiver, I could clearly see how it would be Jalen Waddle taking Tyreek Hill. If Tyreek Hill really is, I wouldn't say as bad this year as he was last year, but just no longer Tyreek Hill.
I would say Waddle is the best bet. I mean, Tyreek literally changed his Twitter avatar to the picture of AB taking off his jersey against the Jets, okay? There is some really weird potential that could go down with this Dolphins offense, and accordingly, Waddle would be, the last man standing, if you will, and just ready to soak up all those fantasy-friendly targets. So I still have a hard time just pounding Waddle in every single draft out here just because I haven't been able to convince myself exactly why last year turned out as bad as it did, but I do think at the end of the day, Freedman, again, we have a large enough sample with Waddle here. I don't think he just magically became bad at football all of a sudden. The monsters didn't take his powers. Okay, this is real life we're talking about here. Travis Hunter is interesting. Number 2 overall pick, Heisman. It does seem like after the preseason game that we are going to see something very close to a full-time role. And man, if he does actually end up getting more of that slot role, we saw the reps, split up actually, I think exactly evenly 5 and 5 between him and BTJ, but could just be a situation where, in full PPR, he does manage to outscore BTJ as great as he is in the first place. Would be more so surprised with Devonta, JMO, and Pickens. But even then, guys, we're talking about offenses that should be capable of supplying multiple top 24 wide receivers. Devonta's got there each and every year alongside A.J. Brown. They've been together. Jameson got there last year. And again, really just even as stuff continues to go south with Micah Parsons in Dallas. Even before that was happening, I was thinking they could be the NFC version of the Bengals, if you will. Now it's starting to look more and more likely there. So Pickens is one of these guys, too, that he actually did come in as one of my must-draft players. That article's up there on Fantasy Life where, again, guys, it's not must-draft players as in, you have to, by all accounts, please freaking draft this guy. But a certain ADP, that is pretty close to what I'm saying. So over at Sleeper, we're seeing George Pickens go as a round 6 pick. Devonta Smith is round 6 at ESPN. Jameson Williams is round 7 on ESPN. I'm with you, Freedman. When I get to this tier, and I've kind of poked fun at some of the people that are just saying, you need to draft Travis Hunter because everyone else is hyping up these same players in the same tier. I do want multiple shots at all these guys, man. And again, shout out auction guys. This would be the tier I'm trying to get multiple guys from.
Yeah, this feels like a wide receiver power alley, and it kind of touches on why I like having a pick in the middle of the draft, because I think I will have a shot of getting 2 guys in this tier, one at the front end and then one on the back end. But yeah, so many guys here. I do like Jameson Williams. Incredibly efficient last year. He's got the speed. He's become a better route runner over his time in the NFL. And I'm not going to trash Amon-Ra St. Brown, who is, I think, a top 5 wide receiver, but Jameson Williams just has a different skill set. And I'm not saying he's going to overtake Amon-Ra St. Brown, but he could be a very strong complementary wide receiver to St. Brown, to where it's at the end of the season, if one of them had 1,400 yards and one of them had 1,300 yards, could you really say oh, this guy's clearly better than the other one? I think it would be well, this is one of the best tandems in the league. And then to your point about Travis Hunter, man, super interesting. I think in a lot of the 3 wide receiver sets that we see, he's going to be in the slot, which I think is great for his value because I think it will be easier for him to get those PPR friendly targets. And I am doing a pretty robust updating of the projections right now. And I did give a boost to Travis Hunter. I wouldn't say I was previously too low on him, but I think the case for upside is much more realizable now than it was before this last preseason game.
And again, it's a situation where we've known he's going to play offense. It's always just been a matter of how much. Seems like that's very much trending in the right direction. And I will say, guys, I've gotten the chance now to get, a handful of redrafts under my belt, many more to come as well, obviously. But it's just really fun to draft Travis Hunter. I'm not saying you necessarily should be drafting players just because of the fun aspect of it, but I can tell you, maybe it matters a little bit, and drafting Travis Hunter is fun. Drafting Brian Robinson, Freedman, I think it makes sense. It's not very fun. I draft Brian Robinson, I go, what am I doing with my life right now? Travis Hunter, that is fun, and for that I do appreciate it. Tier 7 wide receivers, guys. Wide receiver 34 through 41. I dubbed this one could very well look dumb for not ranking higher. Stephon Diggs, Jordan Addison, Jawan Jennings, Rome Odunze, Rashee Rice, Jaden Reed, Jerry Jeudy, and Chris Godwin. I will say, based on some of the preseason stuff and news that we've had, we have the ever-evolving rankings over at fantasylife.com. So maybe a few updates here. As always, code Ian, code Freedman, code something else. Maybe that'll get you even more than 20% off, but code Ian and Freedman at least for 20%. Again, it's a situation, Freedman, where I can see kind of the advantage to all these guys, and I still want to probably get one of them on the fantasy squad. That's a pretty clear downside, at least, to most parties involved. So out of these tier 7 wide receivers, though, Freedman, which one do you think has a chance of being a consensus top 20 wide receiver by October?
I'm saying Jerry Jeudy, and he's already done it. When you look at what he did last year without Deshaun Watson and the 10 games at the end of the season without Deshaun Watson, who I think at this point we can safely say one of the worst quarterbacking stints that we've seen in the NFL over the past 3 years. So unshackled from Watson. And then, of course, no Amari Cooper either because he was traded. We saw Jeudy really get the opportunity to be the number one wide receiver in that offense, and he smashed 103 targets in 10 games, 963 yards, 3 touchdowns. And he was, if you look at the utilization report, which, everyone who's watching on YouTube, you can see that on the screen, the utilization report, Jerry Jeudy, the last 10 games of the season, was the number 8 wide receiver with an 87 utilization score. Like, just absolutely smashed. And I think regardless of whatever you think about Shedeur Sanders or Joe Flacco, I think they are a better combination than the quarterbacking that he had last year. So Joe Flacco in his last 17 games has thrown for 4,755 yards. Like, that's ridiculous. That's probably not projectable to this season. But like, the fact is, Joe Flacco is a dude who still slings it, right? And Shedeur Sanders, I think, is a better player than he got credit for. Certainly a better player than he got credit for through the NFL draft process. A better player than most of the backups who could replace Joe Flacco. So I think the quarterbacking situation is not terrible. Let's just say, like, it's average. Average is good enough for Jerry Jeudy, given that there aren't all that many wide receivers who are like settled. It's a very uncertain wide receiver room that he's in. And we saw Jeudy do it last year. I have Jeudy right now projected for 129 targets. I think he just smashes his ADP. And I wouldn't say like he breaks the wide receiver 1 ranks, but I think weekly he's a solid wide receiver 2 as we start ranking him, getting into like weeks 2 and 3. And people are like, oh yeah, Jerry Jeudy got a lot of targets last week. Like, I think he just very quickly moves up the ranks.
Guys, gross but true. Weeks 8 through 18 last year, both played 10 games, 103 targets versus 102 targets. Jerry Jeudy had more receiving yards than Puka Nacua out here, okay? And you can say it was all Jameis Winston, and yeah, we had Njoku and Tillman dealing with some injuries too, but Jeudy put some good foam out there, had one of the best revenge games of all time. Actually got Steve Smith to shut up about him for once. Really was, again, a great just kind of moment and stretch run for Jeudy. I know I've been, happy to actually get that out of him after drafting him a bit too high for many years before that. So I hear you on Jeudy. I probably should be ranking him a little higher for you because honestly, everything I continue to spout off about Calvin Ridley, I also do believe applies to Jeudy as well. So we'll say Stephon Diggs, someone as wide receiver 34. Also, yeah, we are liking again the fact that he is not dealing with seemingly that lingering knee issue. He has been fully clear, expect to be out there by week 1. Also has a high target ceiling as Drake Mays, wide receiver 1. Jordan Addison and Rashee Rice, I do think fit this bill because they are in a position where, yeah, we actually could see them returning to action in October after the suspensions. Addison definitely. And shout out Addison, man, in the spirit of, again, these random sample sizes that we love throwing around in the offseason. You look at weeks 9 through 17 last year, Justin Jefferson, PPR wide receiver 4, Jordan Addison wide receiver 5. So, hey, if JJ McCarthy is even half as good as Thor Nystrom says he is, maybe we see that get going again. Again, Jaden Reed, we'll see what happens with him. He's got the boot on right now. Also have Chris Godwin with the unclear timeline to return. So, a lot of, again, upside in this tier. You are not buying Roma Dunze, though, Freeman. Here's your wide receiver 39. It is a situation where, again, yeah, pull the Devontae Adams card. Just say that the bad rookie season doesn't even matter. Similar to DJ Moore, though, just a lot of target competition. And, oh, yeah, I hope Caleb Williams is good now.
Yeah, the target competition is really, in my opinion, what hurts Rome Odunze. Because I mentioned earlier, I think DJ Moore is good, and he's been an established target hog throughout his career. And then you add in Colson Loveland, and then you add in Luther Burden and Olamide Zaccheaus, like just a number of guys who could get the ball there. DeAndre Swift is one of the better third down pass catching backs in the league. Like, it's just not guaranteed that Rome Odunze just jumps out and has like 120 targets. Like, he's going to have to earn it. And that's not to say that he can't. It's just to say the target competition is tough. We haven't seen it from Caleb Williams yet. You do have a new head coach there, and that's probably a good thing. But sometimes guys can struggle a little bit, even if they're great offensive play callers. They could struggle a little bit in transitioning to being a head coach and a play caller. So just a lot of questions that need to go in the right direction for Rome Odunze to pay off at his ADP.
Again, guys, we've gone through the first 7 of my wide receiver tiers. You can see the full list over at fantasylife.com. Time for the fourth quarter, though, of the Fantasy Life Show. We got tier 8 and tier 9. Get those 4s up. Producer Kelsey yells at me every single time I forget to get the fours up, and for good reason. I need to be held accountable here on the Fantasy Life Show. So get them up at home as well, everyone. Again, a few more things to get to here on the Fantasy Life Show. Freedman, Tier 8, we got wide receiver 42 through 53. I have called this one The Last of Us. Great TV show, by the way, and also a pretty good name for the tier, if you ask me. Matthew Golden, Keon Coleman, Ricky Parasol, Debo Samuel, Khalil Shakur, Josh Downs, Michael Pittman, Rashid Shaheed, Emeka Ibuka, Darnell Mooney, Cooper Kupp, and Christian Kirk. I do need to move Emeka Ibuka up. I have moved Matthew Golden up, and maybe not even high enough for even. I have him up as wide receiver 38 now. You still have him down there at wide receiver 45. I just think given the fact that reason the boot, we got Dontavian Wicks with the calf. Christian Watson's not coming off the pup anytime soon. Even before talking about the first round talent in an offense we believe in, Matthew Golden really at home league cost as well as someone that I would say is a priority at this point in fantasy drafts. That said, Freedman, again, my favorite sleeper in this tier is going to be Matthew Golden. Also like Keon Coleman, and I've talked about him plenty. Who would be your favorite sleeper, though, out of this tier 8 wide receiver group?
Yeah, you mentioned Golden and Emeka Ibuka. Both of those guys, I think, are kind of versions of each other. First round wide receivers who have some good athleticism. On a depth chart where there is competition there, but this is just way too cheap, I think, for first rounders of their talent. But I'm going to go with Ricky Pearsall, a first rounder last year who really didn't do much if you kind of just look over the entirety of his season, but did a lot when he was a starter. And the situation that he's in now, Brandon Ayuk tore his ACL last year, probably not going to start the first 4 weeks of the season, maybe even more than that, probably like the first 6 weeks. And it could be an injury that kind of lingers into, the entirety of the season after that. Debo Samuel is gone. Jawan Jennings is dealing with a lingering calf injury. Some of the wide receivers behind Ricky Pearsall on the depth chart are also injured. And then Pearsall in his 4 starts last year, 321 yards, 3 touchdowns receiving, and then also had 3 carries that he leveraged into 45 yards on the ground. So I think he has a ton of upside. And I will just say, even with all the wide receivers who are injured, I think that offense could still be really good. We talked about Jimmy G earlier in the show, and how with Kyle Shanahan, he was like actually a pretty competent quarterback for that offense. Brock Purdy is like Jimmy G on steroids. Like over the past 3 years, he's been one of the best quarterbacks. Let me rephrase this. He's been the number 1 quarterback in the league in terms of EPA per play and completion percentage over expectation as a composite metric. Like now you could say that's not him, and that's maybe true. That's the system that he's in, but he's able to execute that system to perfection. And if that system is there, some wide receiver is going to benefit from it. And I don't think it's going to be Ayuk. Jawan Jennings, he has the potential. We saw that last year, but he's injured right now. And calf injuries, they can linger into the season. Pearsall is healthy right now. He's one of the only wide receivers on that team who is healthy. And we saw the upside last year. He is someone I absolutely want in this range. But I'll say I want a number of guys in this range, but Pearsall is probably at the top of the list.
I've gone back and forth throughout the offseason on Pearsall versus Jennings. I'm starting to think the answer for Freeman is just, yes, get whatever one you can. If you get both, then I'm okay with that too. I've seen smart guys on both kind of sides of the fence here. I know Matt Harmon over at Yahoo is a big Ricky Bowles guy this year. Meanwhile, Hayden Winks and our own Dwayne McFarland are a bit more preferential towards Jawan Jennings. So I will say that calf injury, as much as that continues to linger, probably a good enough tiebreaker for me. But hey, Freeman, we did the show last week, again, just kind of breaking down some of the biggest differences in the bigger money leagues, the nerds of us out there versus the normies. And both these guys really do stand out. I mean, both of them going outside the top 120 overall players on ESPN and CBS, outside the top 100 on Yahoo as well, top 90 on Real Time Sports, and top 90 on FFPC. So again, not saying the dudes investing more money in their drafts are always going to be on the sharp side of things, but just again, at that sort of discount, especially in ESPN, CBS, really will be making a habit to target these 49ers wide receivers. Last tier, Freeman, I'm not going to read everyone through. We are at wide receiver 54 and beyond at this point, but did want to again give a shout out to at least a few: Brandon Ayuk, Rashad Bateman, Cedric Tillman leading things off. Got Cedric Tillman, Jaden Higgins, Luther Burden as some of the rookies there. I will say real quick, if you guys are in a keeper league, Brandon Ayuk just makes a ton of sense as someone you can get a lot later. Once we do finally get that clear good bill of health, he's going to be going much earlier in drafts next year. And unlike suspended guys, you can keep him in your IR and not really worry about it right now. All that said, Freeman, Freedman, tier 9 plus, or maybe a wide receiver I didn't even list that you have drafted or want the most to come away with. If you want to have a dynasty angle here, go ahead, my friend.
Marvin Mims. I talked about him in a piece I wrote last week on my favorite bench picks. And I'll say, like, my median projection for him at the time wasn't special, but the ceiling was high. And then now I've bumped up the median projection because we saw in this last preseason game, he was out there as a full-time wide receiver. Him and Cortland Sutton, they were out there as the two starters at the wide receiver position, running all of the routes with the first team offense. And I'll just say, Mims is talented. He's a first team all-pro returner like Tyreek Hill or Cordarrelle Patterson earlier in their careers. He's got the second round draft capital. He's productive with his aerial opportunities, 10.4 yards per target. He gets the ball as a runner, 22 carries across his 2-year career. Like, I know RJ Harvey has kind of gotten some talk as like the potential quote unquote joker in that offense, but like, I think Mims could actually be the joker in that he gets carries and he gets receptions. And then Cortland Sutton, like, nothing against him, but look at him. He's old. He's 30 years old this year. And after Sutton, that wide receiver depth chart is wide open. And this could be an ascending offense with Bo Nix entering his second season, paired with a really strong play caller in Sean Payton. So Marvin Mims, I think, is severely discounted at his ADP.
I actually ended yesterday's show, I should say, saying that my bold preseason, just kind of like I am going to get carried away take, was Marvin Mims actually now being someone I do want to target in drafts. So I'm with you, Freeman. Again, gadget touches are fine as long as they don't come at the expense of a full-time role. And seeing Marvin Mims get all that 82% route rate usage with the first team, and even a lot of it coming out wide as a true traditional wide receiver, really, really encouraging stuff going into 2025. So good stuff, Mr. Freeman. Again, code Freeman over at fantasylife.com if you guys are looking to get 20% off either of our tier 1 or tier 2 subscriptions. But otherwise, just go ahead and go out there and have a great rest of your day. Plenty more Fantasy Life show to come, though. Appreciate if you guys want to like and subscribe or not. Whatever, it is a free country after all. But for Freeman, for producer Matt, for producer Kelsey, I'm Ian. Thanks again for tuning in. Until next time, take care, everybody.